on, guys? It's Seth back with another Defense Wins Fantasy, and free agency has cooled off a bit, but there is one player that I wanted to make sure that we noted. Not a player that's been overwhelmingly impactful in his current tenure, but it's all about opportunity, and Devin Bush going to the Seahawks as a starting linebacker for them because they ain't got anybody there will be noteworthy. Listen, I get it. This guy has been on a downward trend since his rookie year. Tore his ACL in year 2, and it just has not been the same player. Had 109 tackles his rookie year, 26 in that injury year, 70 when he played 14 games in 2021, and then 81 tackles last year. But each year getting less productive as far as fantasy goes with overall point totals. A concern for sure. You weren't playing him. He's probably on your waivers, but Jordan Brooks will not be ready for the start of the season. Jordan Brooks might not be ready for the entire season. Cody Barton is now a Commander. Will they draft somebody? I don't know. They have 2 first-round draft picks. They have the capital to maybe splurge, and they tend to like taking a linebacker in the first round. If you remember, Jordan Brooks was a bit of a surprise when they took him. But the fact of the matter is, it's flyer time. You got to take an option on this. If you have free agency and he's out there, grab him. If you got a spot, hang on to him, because Jordan Brooks has been averaging 180 tackles a season. Bobby Wagner was getting that before he left. The fact of the matter is, the scheme fits a linebacker being very valuable. And I don't think he's a great player, but as a one-year fill-in while Jordan Brooks gets healthy, grab him. Grab him and use him. Now, with that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about schemes tonight. Something that probably doesn't get talked about nearly enough when it comes to fantasy football and IDP. It's a lot more prevalent on the IDP side than it is on the offensive side. But player turnover or coach turnover, who's now running the defense? What kind of scheme do they put out there? Are they running a 3-4 defense? Is it a 4-3 defense? Is it some blend of everything? What does that mean for the players that are there? What does that mean for the players that had a great year last year? Is it going to stay the same? Or players that were bad last year, are they going to be better this year in a different scheme? That's what I wanted to dive into, because we've got a decent amount of turnover when it comes to the defensive coordinators in the league this year. Partially because those defenses were so good, partially because those defenses were so bad. So we're going to start with the Arizona Cardinals, where they cleaned house. Cliff Kingsbury is out in Thailand somewhere with his girlfriend. Good for him, but we got to play football. We got to figure something out. So they basically went and said, hey, we want part of that Eagles magic. So they grabbed the defensive coordinator, Jonathan Gannon, now as their head coach. So what's that mean? Well, he brought his buddy with him to play as the defensive coordinator. So we know that it's going to be scheme-specific to what Gannon likes to do. What does he like to do, Seth? Nothing. And what I mean by that is he's really kind of bland. Doesn't really blitz a lot. He uses simple personnel packages. The coverages aren't spectacular. They're simplistic. Doesn't mean that he's a bad coach. He's just conservative when it comes to that. One thing they definitely do is they pick a linebacker and they stick with him. So I don't know exactly what that means for Isaiah Simmons or Zaven Collins. My gut tells me that Zaven Collins is going to be the guy that plays the inside middle linebacker key, the TJ Edwards, if you will, of this defense coming into the season. I don't know what to do with Isaiah Simmons. Is he going to play, an outside linebacker? Is he going to play? Last year, he played a majority of his role kind of in like a slot giant nickel kind of formation. That's when he started getting some good point totals in IDP, but that entire defense is gone. The team that drafted him is gone. He's a unicorn that hasn't been used right since he's been in the league, and I don't know if this team is going to be able to use him right either. Now, the good thing is that their cornerbacks suck so much, and they have no defensive line to even speak of. So having an athlete like Isaiah Simmons on the field is something that's going to be valuable, even if they play him as a large slot as they did the year before, or move him back to a little bit of safety. But that's the one thing that the Cardinals actually have. Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker are two of the best safeties in the league. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. My gut tells me that Zaven Collins is a guy that you want as far as the middle linebacker, TJ Edwards style role. And Isaiah Simmons, if you have him on your team, I'd be a little nervous on how that's going to pan out for him. He might only be a situational guy. He might only be getting 60% of the snaps. And that matters. So grab Zaven, watch Isaiah. Both of them could be successful, but I feel like only one of them is going to be truly valuable when it comes to IDP. Now the Atlanta Falcons had their defensive coordinator retire. So they brought in Ryan Nielsen from the Saints. Not too much, I feel like, is going to change as far as the defensive setup for the Falcons, because they have the Saints defensive coordinator. They're still going to play a mix of the 3-4-4-3. The one thing that you would be a little concerned about is that the Falcons have typically done a very strong 2 linebacker system, but that's likely to maybe drop back a little bit. Now, the Saints like having the 2 linebackers as well. They rarely have done the single linebacker look, but they like to rotate their linebackers just a little bit more. The 2 starters that were more at 100% for the Falcons previously will probably be more at a 90%. And what does that mean? 90? That's still a lot, Seth. Yeah, yes, it is. But when you're talking about it over a 17-game equivalent season, person playing 90% of snaps is playing 1,000. Person playing 100% of snaps is playing 1,100 snaps. So 100 more snaps over the course of the entire season, which is basically 6 more snaps a game, 6 more opportunities a game to get tackles, to get turnovers, to make a play. It does matter, and it will boost up. If you have that extra 10%, you're going to increase your baseline. It's just a fact. So with him bringing over Caden Ellis also in free agency to this team, it tells me that he knows the system, that Ryan Nielsen wanted him here to be the lead dog as far as the linebacker is concerned. I still think that Troy Anderson is that other guy, and I think that because he has that athleticism, there's a chance of him staying on the field even more than normally. But with Mykal Walker in the wings, who's a very solid linebacker, that rotation might be a little stronger than I first felt like it was going to be. So I'm a little bit hesitant on the Anderson, Caden Ellis, 1-2 punch as I was. I think that both of those might end up more around 85% of snaps when all is said and done on the season. And that is even more significant, obviously. But pay attention to how this team is playing early in the season. And if you need to either trade for or trade somebody away, look at their snap percentages. It will be a linear path all the way through the season on how they want to run that defense. So next up, we have the Carolina Panthers, another team that fired everybody, got rid of them all. They brought in Frank Wright, and he hired Arajo Evero as the defensive coordinator, who had a 1-year stint with the Broncos. Last year, that Broncos defense was phenomenal. And Phil Snow was the guy that was running the Panthers defense. It was innovative and became a little bit more mainstream. The key that I see here is you can really draw the line back from Avero's time in Denver back to the 2020 Rams defense under Brandon Staley. Plays a lot of the heavy odd fronts, a lot of the nickel secondary, which means a lot of single linebacker packages. That's the point. So what does that mean when you have a Shaq Thompson, Frankie Luvu type linebacking core? Well, it's not really good. Even if you have Frankie Luvu, he was great last year, but he's not going to be the full-time single linebacker guy. Ernest Jones was the guy in that defense, and he was never a linebacker that really was super impressive as far as the stats went. 80 tackle guy kind of on the season. That's where Frankie could drop down to. Shaq Thompson, maybe there, probably less. The part that's a little bit more interesting is in the safety area, where the previous regime wanted to play the 3 safety roles and put Jeremy Chinn in the box. Probably going to see more 2 safety roles. And I talked about this last week when we were talking about the free agencies, that I wanted to dive into this a little bit more. I'm not as happy about these signings for the Carolina Panthers with Von Bell. It just, to me, feels like we're going to not see... It feels a little bit like the Patriots, where everybody's going to hurt everybody, and we're not going to see any dominate safeties. My money would still be on Jeremy Chinn, because he has been that rock-solid guy, unless they decide to keep him in a box-heavy role. I just don't see it. He was great as an IDP rookie with that. He had a pretty solid season last year. I think that this is the time that Jeremy Chinn's going to see a drop-off. I wouldn't be investing in Jeremy Chinn. I wouldn't be trading for him. It's very, very nerve-wracking to me if I'm an owner of Jeremy Chinn, because he excels in the box, and if they're going to go with a too high safety look, he's not going to get the stats that he was getting. Now, if they brought in Von Bell to have them two play back and have Jeremy Chinn help with the nickel kind of deployment, then I'm interested. But it's so much of a wait and see on how they're deciding to put everybody out on the field, that I'm just a hold on Jeremy Chinn right now. I'm not gonna go crazy and trade him for peanuts, and I'm also not gonna go and pay a high price for him. Let's just see how this pans out the first 1 or 2 weeks of the season. Next team we're going to talk about is the Cleveland Browns. Now, they went from Joe Woods, who is one of those future super intelligent, bright, shining stars that's just about to shoot it to the moon. He didn't do very good last year, let's be honest. So maybe not the most brightest type of future star. So what did they do? They went and got Mr. Old Reliable, who's normally good for 1 or 2 year stint on a defense, and that's Jim Schwartz. He loves to blitz the quarterback. He loves to do a heavy D-line rotation. He loves blitzing. Myles Garrett will see some benefits of this, and he will probably be the one that has the least amount of rotating off the field compared to everybody else. I expect the IDP points on this defensive line to be strong, them to have a lot of points, but it's also going to be a little bit of whose turn is it to get the sack, who's going to be the guy that gets all the points. Obviously, Myles Garrett is going to be one of those guys, but it's going to be tough. They're going to be posting sacks, but it's going to be just a hodgepodge of, pick the winner, get a prize. I don't know exactly how that's going to play out. I know that Myles Garrett's going to succeed from this, and I know that the linebackers will have solid production. They're not going to be top tier production, but they're going to be startable week in and week out. The tough part is that with Schwartz defense, the interior line is so important. And that's probably the weakest part of this Browns defense is going to be that. So, we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Myles Garrett to the moon. He's going to be getting a lot of opportunity. I'm okay with JOK going into this season. The rest of them are just going to be, where are we at with the rotational amounts? Check the snap percentages. But I feel good about the guys on the line getting production. Just how consistent that production is going to be is where I'm not so sure. Next team up is Denver Broncos, because they lost their defensive coordinator, so they had to replace him. So they've spent a whole lot of money on Russell Wilson. They spent more money on the offensive line. They traded picks for Sean Payton. Sean Payton brought in Vance Joseph, which Vance Joseph, to me, is a guy that I'm surprised that keeps getting work. I don't ever see his defenses actually being extremely valuable. He is a 3-4 guy. He does, they do some flexing out, this, that, and the other, like all the defenses do now. But he was with the Cardinals, right? Their linebacking core was meh. Their D-line had, J.J. Watt had a great year, but that was J.J. Watt probably more than anything else. They typically use a pretty orthodox linebacker and secondary usage. They don't kind of have weirdness. The exception to that, obviously, is the Isaiah Simmons that he had last year. But once again, you have a unicorn that you're trying to get on the field. He's never done it before then. He didn't even do it the year before. So the expectation is that's not the norm. I don't expect them to try to put somebody in the quote-unquote Isaiah Simmons position on this defense. He'll pivot off that, and he'll be a little bit more of the standard 3-4 front. So that gives Alex Singleton and Josie Jewell some opportunity to be beneficial, get a lot of tackles. The rest of the defense is going to be, I think, consistent. I think they're going to have some opportunity. Randy Gregory, still don't ever draft him. He's a solid player, terrible IDP player. So, it's kind of, I don't think this one changes that much, I guess, is what I'm really getting to it. I don't think that there's going to be a big change in who the valuable guys are on this team. I don't think that they're going to have the Isaiah Simmons role. I think it's going to be a lot of pressure, kind of trying to get a lot of tackles from your interior linebackers and hoping that the outside linebackers get sacks. That's it. That's kind of all it is. So we'll move on to the Houston Texans. Lovie Smith's 3 linebacker defense looked old, decrepit, and just got destroyed on the field. It's just one of those things. You have 3 linebacker packages where you had linebackers covering the slot, where nickel corners are getting big paydays now. It went terrible. It went about as good as you expected it. So what did they do? They went and got DeMeco Ryans as their head coach. And he came from the 49ers. And the defense for the 49ers does a high volume of 3 linebacker packages. But theirs look way better, right? But they still do a lot of 3 linebacker packages. Granted, when you have Alshire, Fred Warner, and Dre Greenlaw, it's easy to look good. But even Robert Saleh and with the Jets is doing, with C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams and whoever their other linebacker is, not to the same effect, but still putting out that 3 linebacker deployment. What this means is Christian Kirksey, I feel like, is safe. They signed Perriman there, so I'm curious to see where him and Harris kind of go into that. And maybe it's going to be more Perriman and Harris, and Kirksey's going to be taking the step back. He's older. He's got a lot of money still owed to him, but he's not the guy he used to be. But the D-line should be rotational. It should be strong. It should be gap-driven. They aren't going to have a lot of guys that are just going to go off script. They're going to follow the rules, make sure that they don't give up the big play on cutback runs, anything like that. They've got a lot of draft picks in this draft again. They've got 2 in the first again with number 2, which we likely think is going to be a quarterback, but then they pick in the early teens, and there's the opportunity for them to get a very, very good piece to this defense. I expect it to probably be a corner or D-line. D-line is the priority, but it depends on how the draft falls. There's a lot of good corners that could play very well against Derek Stingley Jr., and that would be awesome to watch. IDP-wise, not as exciting as if they were to get a strong defensive end or defensive tackle player in here on this line. So moving on, we'll go to the Miami Dolphins, and they got rid of Josh Boyer, who was an overkeep from the Brian Flores regime. What they do, they went and got Vic Fangio and paid him more than a lot, like some of the head coaches in the NFL are getting, it feels like. That might not necessarily be true, but it sure felt like it. He's got exceptional defenses, but the tough thing with the Dolphins is that for 4 years, they've been building a defense very, very specific, with a very certain set of skills. All these guys are very unique and fit the man-heavy cornerback run, edge to linebacker hybrids, and guys that can play inside and out on the D-line. Where you have, you got the Zach Sealer, you've got the Christian Wilkins, you've got Jalen Phillips and Emmanuel Ogbah who can be hand up, hand down. You got Bradley Chubb now. All these guys, what's going to happen? Well, how is this going to work? Well, Fangio's played with Chubb before, or coached Chubb before, so that helps. I think that they're still going to they're going to have a better pass rush this year than they have in the past, based on scheme and based on strategy. The pass rush that was really successful in past years was bringing the house and just bring more people than they can block rather than strategically plan for them not to know who to block. And you got a lot of good run by Javon Holland. You got a lot of good run by Brandon Jones from the safety spots, getting sacks, getting those big plays. Brandon Jones played in the box a lot in the previous defense. He did get injured last year and missed the rest of the year, but he was more of the box guy. And Fangio prefers 2 deep safeties. So for Javon Holland, don't think it's going to impact him too much as far as his points. He's a big play kind of guy, but he also makes a lot of tackles. Brandon Jones, I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about him holding on to the starting job. They could go out and still make a splash at safety in free agency. They could be planning to take one in the 2nd or 3rd round to round out this defense. I think that they should probably focus a little bit more on keeping Tua out of the concussion protocol, but that's just, every person that watched Tua get killed last year's thoughts. Just maybe a recommendation. But it's going to be interesting to see. They also brought in David Long. And David Long, I think, is going to play very, very well as the tackle-heavy linebacker. Jerome Baker will still be solid and admirable between tackles. I'm thinking maybe 80 to 100. Possibly some more big plays than David Long would have. But the guy to own week in and week out is going to be David Long on the linebacking core. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings. They brought in Brian Flores. So just what we talked about, how the team is very specific and is going to have some turnover, and we don't really know if all these pieces are going to fit into the puzzle. Same thing now with Brian Flores. What is that going to look like, with a scheme change to go to more of the man coverage, to go to more of the heavy blitz packaging, to go to more of the single linebacker and nickel usages? Where's that going to look at? Well, as the corners are going to play more man. The linebackers are going to be asked to play more of the A-gap and more run stuffing. So just kind of fitting in there. Harrison Smith, I think, can still have a phenomenal year. Even at his late age, he might be a trade candidate because he is going to fit this defense and he's going to succeed in it. I'm also very excited about Lewis Cine coming back, the rookie safety from last year, and seeing how he fits into this role. I see him and Harrison Smith in a very similar light as far as their play style. So it's going to be curious to see if Brian Flores is going to do a little bit more of the blitzing with the safeties and rotate it between Harrison Smith and Lewis Cine and have the other one drop into cover. I don't know. I'm excited to see how this defense pans out because it's very, very risk-reward. If you don't have the right pieces in it, it will flounder. Moving on to the New Orleans Saints. They lost their defensive coordinator who went to Carolina. He went to Atlanta. My apologies. He went to Atlanta. Got to keep all these straight. So now they got Joe Woods, who we talked about got fired from the Browns. It's just a giant carousel, really. But what does that mean with Dennis Allen, who is a defensive mind? Is he going to still control this defense? I think he does. There might be some situational changes with linebackers and stuff like that. But if it didn't work very well for Joe Woods there, Dennis Allen's going to say, nope, Demario Davis and Pete Werner are staying on the field. We'll play our nickels. We'll figure everything else out. But they are the catalyst to this team. I don't know if I fully believe that. I want to. Big Pete Werner fan. Really think that he can just take that next step up. He was on the way last year before he got hurt. But there's potential risk. We are likely to see one full-time job at linebacker. And it's very likely could be Demario Davis, and it very likely could be Pete Werner. I would think that with Werner being younger, more spry, you might put him in there. But Demario Davis has just been an Iron Man in his career. I mean, he has been there forever. So it's a tough gamble on which side of the coin you're going to take. The fact of the matter is, keep an eye out. Look at the snap percentages. See what you think you see. I feel like there's not going to be a lot of change, but I could be absolutely wrong with this one too. It's a tough one to kind of read when you have a defensive-minded coach hiring a defensive coordinator that plays significantly different. I just think that if it is going to be one guy, I would pick the guy that's under 34 years old to be the one playing all the snaps and bring in Davis when it matters. Moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, we can talk about them losing their defensive coordinator, or we can talk about them losing like half their defense. Just everybody left. Outside of, they were able to get back both their corners. So they got Bradbury, they got Slay. Their new defensive coordinator had one real okay year with Chicago. It's just, I mean, his name's Sean Desai. I'm not excited about it. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of change. It's kind of an ain't broke, don't fix it mentality with this defense. I think it's next man up. Everything's going to kind of stay the same. He's a Vic Fangio disciple, so we knew that. Fangio was there last year as basically just not the defensive coordinator, but like the defensive specialist or vice coach, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But once again, some odd fronts, a little bit of blitzing, 2 high safeties. Expect the D-line to still be strong. Expect the linebacker situation to be strong. I would think that this is Nakobe Dean's year until somebody tells me different when they sign somebody. And I think that he's just going to be ridiculous. And I think that the rest of the team is going to have significant decreases in their fantasy output across the board. More so because there's no way that they can maintain the absurdity in sack numbers that they had from last year. So status quo, if you have your guys, I wouldn't worry too much about how it's going to change, how it's going to impact. I think that it's just they're going to try to run it back. Final team we're going to talk about is the San Francisco 49ers, where they lost DeMeco Ryans. They now have Steve Wilks as their new defensive coordinator, who has a phenomenal career where he had a one-season head coaching chance with the Cardinals, and it was god-awfully bad. But he's still getting employed, so that says something about him. This one is just a guy that's going to sit in the role, and they're going to run the exact same defense back. Those guys on the team could probably run it better than this defensive coordinator at this point in time. Warner, Greenlaw, going to be solid. Hargrave coming over is going to be tremendous. Nick Bosa is going to tear it up. I am a little concerned about some of the cornerbacks that they lost. I think that that's going to be a need for them very, very early in this draft class. Or, still try to sign some people. But I think that without having another first-round pick for the 49ers, pay attention to what they do in the second round. Those are going to be starters on their defense, is what my gut tells me. I especially think that they might take a linebacker that has some versatility, some speed to take over for Alshire, who they lost to the Tennessee Titans. He's not going to be a guy that's going to dominate as IDP goes, but if you have a practice squad or taxi squad, he's a guy that I would grab because if either Greenlaw or Warner gets hurt, he's going to have a fantastic fantasy year. That's just how that's going to work out. It's how it worked out before. Next man up mentality. So that's it. That's what we got so far. You know, there is a lot of changes, and it's important to just take a step back, look at it, and really try to understand what it means for the players that were on that team, the players that are going to that team, and, you know, just how they're going to be lined up. You don't want a guy that had a record sack year to go into a system that no longer blitzes the outside, you know, the left outside linebacker that often. If he goes from blitzing 30% of the time to blitzing 10, opportunity. You're going to lose points. You're not going to get the opportunity to score those points. So it's important to focus on that. Take a gander, take a look, understand what it means. Don't put too much emphasis on it. Don't get so nervous you trade away your whole defense. The players are good. They're talented. They're going to be able to do things, but we want to make sure that they're still going to get the opportunities to be successful at what they're good at. And most of your big-name guys aren't going to have any concern over this. Maybe a little fluctuation, but nothing significantly crazy. So, do your homework. Pay attention. Watch. Don't even necessarily... You don't have to wait till the season starts. If you watch some of the preseason games, just watch on drives, like an entire drive is the same linebacker playing the entire drive. Is he on there on passing downs? Is he on there on rushing downs? So that we know, okay, they like to move their linebackers in and out depending on the situation. They're going to transfer that over to the season. So just watch. You have to watch because if you look at the stat book, it's not the best way to tell it. And I know I'm telling you that you need to watch preseason football. I'm sorry. I am. But on teams that you have value in, at least turn it on for a quarter. All right, that's all for me tonight. Just a reminder that the draft is coming up the end of next month. Very excited about it. Not sure exactly how it's going to break down after pick 5. I think that there's going to be a lot of corners that go earlier than people think. But we'll see. We'll just have to figure it out. But I think that if you're going to say offensive to defensive players drafted in the first round, I'm going to say defense is going to beat them out. Why? Because defense wins fantasy. We'll see you next week.